If this was easy, what would we be doing? You want something that gets you up in the morning and you feel like you're going to create an impact every day.
How do you go about making sure that you build team and momentum and all of these things in remote?
So there are 3 things that all teams need to do, regardless of whether they're remote or...
So what motivated you? What was the seed? What was the kernel of the idea to start Geared for Growth? What got you on this path? Welcome to the CEO and the Salesman podcast. My name's Matthew. Today we're joined by Josephine Palermo, the CEO of Geared for Growth. Really excited to talk to Josephine today because she is actually all about scaling your organization. Of course, that's what we do here as well. I'm really happy to have you here today, Josephine. How are you going?
I'm really good. Thank you, Matthew. It's always great to speak to people like yourselves doing wonderful things and really creating a space where we can have conversations that help us learn, but also give us a bit of an inspiration. So thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Matthew. Appreciate it.
An absolute pleasure, Josephine. Now, look, one of the things that got me about your profile is you talk about people, passion, and purpose. And often I'm talking about that when it comes to being a leader in the technology space. You know, we're always driven by the dollar, but actually what really turns the dial, I've found, is that people, purpose, and passion part. And I'd love to get your take on that and how you can see that rolling out now and actually over the next couple of years.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a good question. I think we often talk about purpose as really driving everything in business. And imagine, let me give you a what if. What if you had a team, or even if it's just you and a few others working in the business, because sometimes at a startup it's just you or you've got someone helping you. What if you had everyone around you really passionate about what they were doing? That's where you get that unleashing of potential. You get unleashing of discretionary effort. People are thinking about the business in different ways. As you're, even when you're not in the business, you may be taking some time off, switching off, in leisure, which is really important to do in business, by the way, that we have a balanced life. But you might make connections because there's a freedom in that. When you're really passionate about something, creates an energy on its own, and it creates almost like a viral vortex or movement around you, and people get inspired. They can feel that passion, and you want something that gets you up in the morning and you feel like you're going to create an impact every day. And whilst the pursuit of money, the pursuit of success financially can be a passion for some people, it won't be for everyone. And often we've seen through a lot of the psychological research over decades and decades of social science is that actually money can be a deterrent to success sometimes. And so you really want to tap in what it is that gets people up in the morning, what gets you up in the morning, and create a business around that. Create that, and part of that is linking your purpose to that.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, so are you speaking about every single person in the organization, and trying to work through what their individual needs are? That's where you're coming from?
Yes, yeah. People will have different reasons why they've joined you, why they're with you, and sometimes it absolutely is to, have a salary or get some security, pay the rent. All of those are really important things, but it's not what gets people up in the morning. What gets people up in the morning, out of bed, raring to go, and, particularly if you're working remote, there has to be something in it for everybody, is the meaning that they're creating out of that work. So how does it relate to the way in which they feel they're making an impact in the work? And it might be that maybe their passions are different to the actual business. Maybe you're selling cars and, you have someone there who's not that passionate about selling cars, but what they are passionate about is helping families create those memories around that car, around the family vehicle. And they're really passionate about helping people to have that family unit that really works. So you link that to selling cars, and you have someone who's just going to hit their sales targets every time, because they're going to come out with that. They're going to actually talk to people, potential buyers, potential customers, in a way that relates to the customer's needs as well. So yes, so it's really finding out what do people really care about? What do they value and what do they care about? And how can we link that to what the business is trying to do?
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. I like the way of thinking there. So I just want to bring you back to the beginning. So what motivated you? What was the seed? What was the kernel of the idea to start Geared for Growth? What got you on this path?
So I've had a number of businesses, Matthew, and Geared for Growth is sort of in that succession line. And I didn't start as an entrepreneur. I worked in higher education. I was an academic. I was a professional
Right.
staff member as well. And then I did a stint at Telstra as a general manager at Telstra, and I was leading large scale change. Really got involved in the technology side of the business, in the network side of the business. It was in Telstra operations. So really great people. At that time, there were 14,000 people that I was responsible for sort of leading change
Wow.
around. And so it was great challenge. And then after that, I started in the consulting space, and I wanted to create a business that helped people change. So change was where I started from, because I get very excited by bringing people to their desired goal and bringing them there in the least time, the least pain, and the most fun. So, if we're not having fun, there's something wrong. So and my company name was about gearing up for change, or creating the gears, the cogs in the wheel, the elements of the engine that really create that momentum. And so for me, gears is that symbol. And I've really worked on creating different types of tools and using what I know in psychology to help people go through really large transformation or small change. And, I work with leaders one-on-one, I work with leaders in teams, and I work with organizations and business as a whole. And it's always about going from where you are now to where you want to be. How do you get there? And gears are also really important they're to me a bit of a metaphor for motivation. Sometimes, and again, it's morning, I'm thinking about bed. You get out of bed, sometimes the gears are not quite moving. You have to do a bit of
Yeah.
stretching to get the oils there and get things moving. But it's always about, how do we motivate people, and particularly in business, how do you motivate people in a particular direction? You want to
Yeah, I
motivate
love that.
yourself, you want to motivate your employees, you want to motivate your customers too. It's all
Yes.
about creating momentum in a direction that you see as important.
Yeah, I really like that. I love the gear metaphor as well. My marketing strategy business is called Tech Talk and TORQUE. So we use a lot of
That's
gear
right.
metaphor in there as well. So I'm fully in line with that. So how do you go about making sure that you build team and momentum and all of these things in remote teams, with remote? In my business and a lot of my clients' businesses, they might have an office, but really a lot of people are working from home. Certainly in the software development space,
That's right.
the best space for a software developer really is a quiet, is a quiet room where they can actually focus and get the job done. So how do you do that?
Yeah.
What are your two or three key areas or things people should be thinking about to really drive a greater connection with their team and their passion and the
Yeah.
business's direction?
So there are three things that all teams need to do, regardless of whether they're remote or working hybrid or fully on site. Three key things, and leaders need to focus on these three things. The first one is, what are the interdependent tasks that the team needs to work on? Why do you need a team in the first place? So are we really a group of people that can work independently and just come together and have a cup of tea once a week? Or do we need to collaborate on certain key things? And it's the leader's job to articulate with the team what those things are. Because if I don't have shared accountability with you, then why would I care about your results? I don't have a vested interest in your results. I am going to just focus on my work, and I might say hello to you over a Zoom or a Teams call, but I'm not
Yep.
tuning in because I don't have a vested interest in what you're doing. But Matthew, if you're working on a project that I'm accountable to as well, if we have a shared set of accountabilities, then suddenly I'm tuning in. because if your success is my success. So the first thing is create work where there are real shared accountabilities, where there's that need to collaborate. And not all tasks need collaboration. Sometimes there are tasks where it's okay for people to work on their own. So leave them to that. Because the opposite happens often is we're pulling people in to meetings, we're pulling people in to collaboration spaces when really what they're doing is quite siloed. And rightly so, it's fit for purpose. So leave those people alone, let them work on their strengths, but people that need to collaborate, articulate what those interdependencies are. And sometimes the interdependencies are about projects. Sometimes in a business, for example, if you've got a senior leadership team, the interdependencies can be about how we're going to develop our people. That should be a shared accountability. It's not just one leader. If I'm the head of sales, all of my other executives should be interested in how I'm developing my people. It's not just my accountability, because the business relies on developing our people, aligned to purpose together. So that's the first thing. The second
Got it.
thing is have a compelling purpose for the team. So as a team, articulate what that team exists to do. So, in the agile space, we're used to using this for epics in projects. I exist to, by doing these few things so that I can make an impact. Use that for your team. This team
Yep.
exists to do what? It could be that they exist to execute a particular part of the strategy of the company, and that's fine, but articulate that, keep articulating it, and make sure that people are aligned on that, and that the whole team has a way of being involved in articulating that. So you've got 100% consensus on that. Everyone needs to, so that when they go and talk to people in the company or external stakeholders or, other customers, they are promoting the team in the same way. Right. So, because that's
Got it.
important. And also then they can receive feedback because, for example, your CEO can say, actually, no, I don't need your team to be doing that. I need your team we've just changed something in the environment. Your team needs to think about this now. So then the leader
Yes.
would go back and go, hey, different purpose. Okay, let's go. Let's articulate a new purpose. So this is the way teams stay relevant. They stay aligned to what companies need them to be doing. And because often I see teams doing really good work, but it's not aligned to mission of the organization. Then the third
Got it.
thing is, do you have the right people? Do you have the right capability? Do you have the right knowledge? And what science tells us is that you need cognitive diversity in teams for teams to perform at a high standard. You need to look at your team. Do you have a bit of groupthink going on? Do you have people who think the same? That's going to not necessarily help you meet uncertainty in the future. It's not necessarily going to help you meet the new skills you need in the future. So you need cognitive diversity, which means sometimes you get that from actually having people from different fields coming together, different backgrounds, different experiences. We often recruit for people that look like us, sound like us, have the same experience to us. You need to recruit
Yep.
for people that are completely different to you. So
Absolutely.
they're the three
I've
things I
seen
would
that often
start
in
with.
I've seen that often in businesses where everybody is the same. And certainly in some of the businesses I work with, they're really smart engineers. They're very, very capable of writing code, and
Yeah.
they populate the business with people who are really great at writing code. And then when a management issue or a sales issue or a communication issue occurs, then they sort of look to the person who's the least inward focused or the least low key in their way of engaging with the world, and it just doesn't seem to work very well. So that's interesting. So the three key areas there are shared accountability, compelling purpose, and having the right people in the right places. I love that. That's
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about building and running a team in those three key areas, is there a particular cadence in relation to meetings, in relation to check-ins? If we're dealing with remote teams, I'm sort of focusing on remote teams. It's a little bit selfish. I've
Yeah.
got a remote team.
Yeah.
So what's the cadence you operate with?
So cadence has to fit what the team is, what's the team's work design. So you've got to, if you've identified the shared accountabilities and your compelling purpose, then fit the cadence to that. So it's not one size fits all. It's not, so you can't lift and shift from another team. You have to
Right.
create it yourself. But questions you can ask yourself is, you can do an analysis of what you're currently doing. So when the team gets together, are you majority just sharing updates with each other, just sharing information? Are you consulting? Are you allowing space to consult with each other, work on problems together? Are you coordinating resources, actually sharing across teams? And are you making decisions together? Now, the highest order task teams can do is make decisions together. And you know you're going to get better decisions if you're doing that well. The lowest order task that teams can do is share information. But unfortunately, when we structure meetings, and it happens in remote teams too, we get people on a call for an hour once a week and we share updates. That is the lowest order task. Cognitively, I don't have to think much about that. I don't have to have high trust for that. I don't really have to care about that very much in terms of what I'm hearing. And frankly, how could I get that information anyway? I could look on the Jira board. I could read the report that comes to the meeting beforehand. So you're getting, when you think about it, you're getting people in a room for an hour to do stuff that is at the lowest order cognitively. Wouldn't we be
So
better
how do you
off?
shift? How do you move
Yeah,
to that higher level? So let's take that next step. Okay, cool. So I've got a weekly or a bi-weekly meeting, or sorry, every twice a week meeting. We're sharing updates. How do we move from that to really
yeah,
genuinely collaborating properly?
yeah. So firstly, I would definitely have that conversation with your team because they've probably got ideas. So that's the thing. So you allow the team to, to bring some ideas into the room. But there are some things that I've seen that work really well. First thing is decide as a team how you will get those shared updates. So it might be that it's a norm. Everyone needs to come prepared having looked at the Jira board or the Trello board. Everyone needs to come prepared having read the reports before the meeting because at the meeting, we actually want to do some problem solving. And this is the problem we're going to brainstorm on together or try to solve together. Or this is the improvement. It could be that things are going really well with a process or a project, and you want to bring it to the team to go, how could we do this even better? Let's put our collective effort to this, right?
Yeah,
So
I like that.
now you're switching on everyone's brain in the meeting because you're giving them a role, you're giving them an ability to collaborate and contribute. It may be that you need to change agendas. So the agenda item is, do the higher order tasks first. So if we need to make decisions about something together, do that first, not last. Don't, we go in, we share the updates first. Don't share the updates, make the decisions together. And really think about coordinating resources. I often see leaders, particularly of functional areas, they have their resources, they have their teams, and they hold them like this. And then another leader holds their teams like this. And really what you want is for them to free up resources so that we can collaborate and coordinate effort. Duplication happens because you have silos. Let's get rid of that. Let's coordinate effort. So really, teams need to be talking more about how can we coordinate? How can we make decisions together? And it could be that you have different meetings for different purposes. So it could be that once a month, it's a problem solving meeting or an improvement meeting, and that's all you talk about. And then maybe the weekly meeting is decisions, coordinating resources, and then you might bring a problem into the room. You could bring, and then importantly, having agenda items that help the team keep aligned to their mission, to their purpose. So bringing customers in, bringing external stakeholders into the meeting to hear about so that the team members can question that person. If you can't bring an external stakeholder or a customer in, you can role play it. You might bring your head of sales in and say, role play your most annoying customer, and we'll help you solve this problem, help them make them happy.
Yeah, I love that. That's
Lots
really
of
cool.
creative ways you can do it. People often say to me, I don't have time. I don't have time. The reason we don't have time is because we're filling our time with these lower order cognitive tasks that we think means collaboration, but it's not. It's actually just bringing people in a room, almost like butting heads for no reason.
Very cool. Hey, so just switching gears for the moment, thinking about how businesses are scaling, because really that's what people are trying to do. They bring people like you into the business and go, right, we want to get to here.
Yeah.
So what are the two or three things that you look for that where it might be a people or a culture issue that you've got to sort of clear out before they can actually really
Mm.
grow and take that next growth step?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is clarity. Are they clear on where they want to go? Without that, we don't know. We don't have a roadmap. So getting really crystal clear on where we want to go. And it's okay to do that even in very uncertain times. Like right now, I feel the stagnation in the economy because geopolitically there is so much turmoil, and for leaders to understand how to manage that is very difficult. You need people to come together to do that. So use your teams. I often help teams to get clear on where they want to go, to help people envision the future. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would do particularly is then look at, well, what are we doing right now that creates a bit of a barrier to that future state? And it might be that often there is a lack of simplicity in our processes, and so often I'm looking for waste, I'm looking for duplication, I'm looking for things that are overly complicated. I often ask a really key question, and I did this, Matthew. I've got a great example of this. I was
Yeah,
tasked
hit me.
with,
I'm
and I
going to
was
write it
when I
down.
was this was
Here
actually
we
when I
go.
was Telstra. I was tasked with getting our incident management response process improved. It was, because that's when we all come together. There's a fault, and we need to really create value very quickly. I was tasked for making that better. And what we had was an overly bureaucratic administrative system in place with a lot of rules, but not enough freedom for innovation. And so I got people together in the room and we did a bit of scenario play to scenario on a real process. We looked at the communications to really help people understand that what they were doing wasn't working. That worked to get people over the line, but the thing that really got them over the line was when I asked the question, if this was easy, what would we be doing? And that
Love that.
unlocked a lot of different ideas, and I was able to get agreement on a new process. So if this was easy, what would we be doing? You have a new vision. Now, let's take the easy road, not the hard road. So I'm looking for, where can we free up a little bit of resource? Because often people, if you're going in a new direction, you have to stop doing some things. And that's the hardest thing for people to do, is to stop doing things that they've been doing for a long time. And then the third thing is particularly looking, do you have the right people in the room? What new skills do we need? What new capability do we need? I was just saying to you, Matthew, I spent the weekend creating apps, right?
Yep.
I'm not a coder. So what new capabilities do you need as a business to help me create apps in the future? And to do that in partnership with you, rather than to do that, to see that as a threat to a lot of software developers, because it's not. We need to partner with great software developers to make that easy for someone like me who wants a no code solution. So
Yes.
where can we automate? What capability do we need? Because capability isn't always a person, it's automating systems as well. So what ideal constellation of skills, knowledge, and attributes, leadership attributes, do we need in the future? And then you've got a roadmap. And change has to start from where you are. Your slowest member is where you start, unfortunately, because otherwise you're
Yep.
pulling people and it's very painful. Start with your slowest member, bring them along. Sometimes people have to be left behind, and that's okay too. That's business, and there are
Yep.
very humane ways of doing that, by the way. We often think about, as leaders, we often think about letting people go and reducing headcount, etc., as the worst time of our lives as leaders. It doesn't have to be. I increased my engagement scores during a massive contraction in the business where I had to reduce my team by 20%. It's possible.
Wow.
You can do things in ways that help people feel recognized and valued through that process. Really focusing on people through all of that is important.
Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned uncertain times, and so you're feeling that out there in the marketplace at the moment. And so, is it because the news cycle is, what happened 2 days ago feels like 2 months ago? Is that the reason that people are feeling that uncertainty?
Well, I think it starts from what's happening in the world. We think of Australia as being, very far away. We're not. We're part of the global economy, and there has been a lot of disruption geopolitically and not just from a financial perspective, but also from conflict in the world. So this year has been very difficult for many people, and people feel that regardless of their stake in that. So we have to recognize that as business leaders, it feels like when there's high uncertainty, we're like, deers in headlights. The safest thing feels like not moving. It's not the
Yep.
safest thing, because in uncertainty, there is opportunity and of course there's threat, but you need to be searching for the opportunity. This is the time where your unicorns can really flourish, right? So where are the opportunities? But you need to bring people from multiple perspectives. You need that cognitive diversity to lean into that. One leader cannot do that on their own. It's too overwhelming. They're not going to necessarily be seeing all the different forces. So really, that uncertainty needs collaboration. It needs collective thought and collective action. So if the leader is feeling a bit like that, and I talk to business leaders who are saying, feels like I can't move left or right, it's okay. It's normal. Bring some people in, share that. Where's the smallest movement we can make? Because progress is really that smallest movement towards your goal. Sometimes you don't know what the goal is and the goal keeps changing. That's okay, but we're still moving forward. That's living as well, isn't it? Taking one
Yeah,
step at a
absolutely.
time. That's what we need to do in business too. So opportunities are there if we bring collective thought in the room, because it could be that we need to change the way we're doing core business, or it might be just adding something, adding a service, adding a different product, or adding more value, getting more connected to what our customers are really searching for. But capabilities of the future are not necessarily just technical capabilities. They are capabilities about relationship building, collaboration, leadership, innovation. They are all relational capabilities. They're about people being able to talk to each other, collaborate together, innovate together, to be strategic in order to see that where those dots are connecting. Often, there are 4 types of thinkers. You need all 4. Have you heard of that, Matthew? 4 types of thinkers? Maybe you.
Tell me about that. Tell me about the 4 types of thinkers.
So you've got your strategic thinkers. They're the people that are big blue sky thinkers. They're the ideas people. They'll connect a dot over here and a dot over here and come up with something new. It's like, and you think, where did they come up with? They are not necessarily good implementers or executors, but they're your ideas people. You need them in the room, but you don't
Yep.
need a lot of them, because you're not going to get anything done. Then you need people who are relational. They think in terms of the heart space. They think in terms of relationships, empathy. They're your customer advocates. They're the ones that can tap into what customer sentiment is telling you. They're the ones that tap into what the vibe is in the room. They're the ones that actually know perhaps how to influence in the organization. They're often boundary spanners. They're the people that people go to when they have a problem. They're the key nodes. You need them. You need that empathy, relationship building, understanding of human nature, because the future is about human nature. It's about where humans are going next in terms of their needs and wants and motivations. So that's the second one. Third one is you need your planners. You need your detail conscious planners. These are the people that your strategists get very frustrated about, because strategists want to talk about an idea, and the planners come in and go, oh, but what's the first step of the plan? And what do I need to do? And you need to tell me about the procedure, and there's a regulation here. So, but you need them in the room as well, because they make things happen. They're your executors and your implementers. And so you need to team them up with your strategists, actually. And then the last ones are your analysts. They're the people that know how to analyze data. They're looking for, sorry, that was my phone. They're looking for high probability patterns in data. They know how to make sense of chaos in data. You need those people as well. 4 types of thinkers. Well, these people have preferences in those thinking modes. And look around you. Do you have those people in your business? What are you missing?
Absolutely. Yeah. For many years, I thought that my wife was just trying to wreck my day, or be the fun police, because I'm always going, oh, we can do this, this, and this, and here are all the good ideas. Her first question is, how are we going to do that? And I go,
Yes,
oh,
so she's the
what do you
planner.
what
She's
do you mean?
thinking execution.
She's absolutely trying to put it in place. And I'm like, no, 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 we're going to take over the world and we're going to build this thing over here. We're going to get this partner over there. And she goes, well, how are we going to do that? And, until I really understood how people think and had some training on that, I genuinely thought she was trying to rain on my parade.
Exactly.
And luckily we solved that pretty early in in
Yeah.
our careers together, because we started our first tech business. Well, I was 22 and she was 21, but now, and we're still together. And she
It's a
now
good
runs the
partnership.
people part. Yeah, well, when we had a tech business, of the 70 people in the organization, I was pretty much in charge of only about 8 people, being the sales and marketing arm.
Yeah.
Everybody else, Terry was in charge of. She was way better equipped to deal with everybody else. And I, because you walk in as I guess, as the visionary person, or the strategy
Yeah.
person, you listen to the customer service person and go, that could be done better. Nobody wants to hear that from me, because I'm not really in their department. Even though I'm the owner of the company, I'm the boss. That wasn't the right move. So I was sort of politely asked to leave the programmers and the customer service people and the finance people and the administration people. Just,
Yeah.
they're not your people. You leave them alone.
Good. And playing to your strengths, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the
Yeah,
other
that's
thing
right.
that I think a lot of founders get this wrong too, because they hold on to so much. They start their businesses, they're doing everything, because you're doing everything when you start a business.
Yep.
But the important thing is knowing when to delegate that out and to get really good people in. And I often see this is a really common mistake. I often see founders bringing in exceptional people, but then not giving them the authority to
Oh
really
man,
run the show and run their
that is
part of the
so true.
business. And so then
Exactly.
they wonder why those people leave. So because people are attracted to some really visionary founders, but you need to delegate real accountability to your good people. They will fail. It's okay. We'll fail together. We'll learn quickly. It's about having a learning and an adaptive response to
Yeah,
that.
no names and no court martials, but I got very close to a business owner who's a friend, and he was absolutely brilliant person in this particular area. He engaged somebody in their organization, and then became so prescriptive that the person just left.
Yeah.
You engaged me to do a job and run this business in a certain way, and now you want to tell me how to do it. Breathe in, breathe out. Have this meeting at this time, and all
Yeah.
too much structure. And that person just went, you know what, I'm out. And so, which takes me to the next point. As a business is growing, we've talked about how to maintain, but talking about growth and how do we, when businesses are thinking about scaling and they're winning their
Yeah.
customers, and quite a few of our clients are doing that, they're winning new clients. How do we maintain healthy scale? And I think that's a really
Mm.
important thing to think about is how do we manage and maintain healthy scale, and what does that look like? What are the outward indicators that the business is healthily scaling, or flip it over, what is the outward indicators they're unhealthily scaling?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because growth can be, it's often something we get excited about, but it can really be a danger zone for businesses that are scaling. So, it and there are indicators that will tell you that your growth is happening at a rate that is unmanageable. The indicators relate to what you value. So, for example, if quality is really important to you, then you must scale at a rate where you can maintain quality. And so you need to be measuring, you need to be tracking for that, tracking, fanning where that's going well, and addressing where it's not going well. If it might be, sometimes quality can dilute as you scale, and that's okay, because you've got measures in place. You might have feedback loops and customer service areas that can manage that. But it might be something else. It might be about the type of customer experience you're trying to create as you scale. You need to be clear about what that is and track for that and measure that, and where is that failing. At the point at which that is failing, you might be on the edge of scalability. It could be about also tracking some of the health of your employees. So the employee health. Are your employees still engaged? Like they were when you were a founding business before you scaled? Are your leaders still creating the environments they need for true collaboration? So are you tracking team performance? I use a great team diagnostics tool from 16 Conditions, which measures team effectiveness. It measures psychological safety. It measures learning, orientation of the team. Are you doing pulse checks around that, so that you're tracking how your team is going? How are they managing that workload, that scalability? Are they still there with you? Are they still engaged? Are they still performing at a high level? Where is that failing? So it is about creating feedback loops around those indicators that are important, not just the financial indicators of growth. It's those other, like, and I love the words you used, Matthew, it's those other health indicators. And they're not difficult to track. They are within the, within the purview of every business to track these things. So it's about having the awareness that you must put that in place. And ideally, you want to put that in place in your growth plan. Put those indicators in place, start tracking from day one.
Okay, very cool. Okay, I like that. So I have continual conversations with everybody and just do that pulse check. And when you say pulse check, is that literally a phone call or a quick meeting rather than an organized thing or a structured thing? Or do you want to really bake that into the process?
It could be. I like data. So collect data, collect it, because a conversation might be peppered with other biases around what I need to hear at the time as the owner, what that person wants to tell me. So you're better off putting in place some pulse checks that are about, anonymous, can be anonymous surveys. You want to be getting feedback from your customers and stakeholders, but in terms of your employees, make it anonymous. That so that there's no problem with them saying what they really need you to hear. Then the important thing is as the owner, you're doing something with that data so that people will continue to tell you the truth. Because if you're not doing anything with that data, you're not making improvements. The important thing when you collect data, you need to replay those results to people so you can say to them, I hear you. Then you need to act. You need to say, I hear you and I'm acting on this. You can say, the reason I'm not acting on that is, if you don't do that, people will stop telling you the truth because they know that it's BS. You're asking them for their opinion and their experience, but you're not really wanting to do anything with it. So a leader's responsibility is to close the loop around that, and then ensure that people have an access to giving you that information in a way that is safe for them. I have no trouble with anonymous surveys. I think that, some founders I know believe that, why does it need to be anonymous? Why can't people come and tell me what's really going on? And it's like, knock on the door, you're the boss. People like security. They don't, they're doing impression management because attention flows up the hierarchy. They're watching you. They've already got your number on what gets you stressed out, what gets you upset, what you like, what news you prefer to hear. And they've already got your number on that. So, don't expect people to not be, trying to influence you around that. You're the leader. They're going to. So it's not a good way of getting the truth. Get the truth in another way. Data is key. Because data is key because then you also get variation and you can see, well, some people are saying this, some people are saying that. The middle is probably where I want to go and act on something.
Beautiful. Okay. And so we've got a whole range of things we've talked about today, but I want to sort of talk about where is Geared for Growth going? What's the next phase? What's that business? What does your business look like? Because I think you also run a couple of businesses, right?
I do.
You have other businesses.
So I'm a partner. Partner in 16 Conditions. So that was the team survey I talked about before. Loved it so much.
Right.
I became a partner. So Geared for Growth is a company that I use to create a lot of the content and social media content, the thought leadership, because I love that autonomy. And then I'm a partner in 16 Conditions where I'm part of a global team working on really putting the science of team leadership, team effectiveness in the hands of every leader. So, but Geared for Growth for me, where I want to go for that, where I'm going to go with that business is to continue to create great content. So for me, it's a bit of a portal in which I create great content. I've got a podcast myself called Teams, Culture and You, where I interview some really great people. I'm looking to doing more work just in relation to building the way in which I automate in that space. So for me, I'm looking at what team I need to grow that business. But for me, it'll be around automation, creating apps and creating ways in which I can work in the digital space without being in the digital space physically. So I need to delegate that out. And that might be also about bringing some people on to help me do that.
I love that, Josephine. Now, hit me with that podcast again. It was Teams, Culture and...
Teams, Culture and You.
And You. Okay, got it. Yeah. Sorry. Just want to make sure I've captured that. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on today. If people want to get in touch with you, how should they do that?
You can go to my website, and easy to remember, Josephine Palermo, .com.au, or you can just find me on LinkedIn, Josephine Palermo, as well. And I'm
Cool.
on LinkedIn a lot, so I'll respond if you send me a hello. And really
And I'll
happy to
make
hear
sure I'll
from
put
anybody.
the any show notes and
Great.
links to your podcast, the website, your all the rest of the
Thank
things
you.
like that. Are there any other resources you wanted to share with the listeners or the viewers today?
Well, I'll share this with you. Maybe we can put a link in the show notes. I've got a really
Yeah,
great team playbook, a high performing team playbook. Really happy to share
perfect.
that with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So just send us a link and we'll make sure that goes in the show
Great.
notes when this goes out. Well, look, Josephine, really enjoyed having you on today. Thank you so much for taking the time. I've taken a few things away. We've talked about the shared accountabilities, compelling purpose, and having the right people. I really like
Mhm.
that idea. Your question about if this was easy, what would it look like? I think that, or what would we be doing? That's really in line with how I think about some of my challenges we've had in businesses over the years.
Mm.
I've often asked the question: if you had ownership and accountability, and responsibility for everything in the world, what would you do about this situation? So my question is probably a little bit more clunky than yours. Yours a bit more polished.
That's great.
But look, I really appreciate, and also look for the opportunity. I think that's really key at the moment.
Mm.
I had a friend of mine complaining about the political outcome recently here in Australia. I said, look, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, it's our job to recognise the playing field and the game that is now set in front of us, and therefore mould and change the way we
That's right.
operate to operate within that game. If we get too stuck on complaining about what's gone in the past or what opportunities we missed, well, then what you're doing is you're living in the past. You're no longer growing and moving forward.
So
So I
true.
love that. Look for the opportunity. Josephine, once again, thank you very much for being on the podcast today. Really appreciate your time. Bye for now.
Thank you so much, Matt. Bye.